All right, should the government demand that pastors hand over their sermons, their sermon notes, and even correspondence with their church members? Oh, sure, it happens in North Korea and in China and Iran. But should churches in America just sit back and shut up when their religious liberty, free speech, freedom of assembly, and freedom of religion is directly threatened? Just when you thought someone in government couldn't display greater disregard for the Constitution after all the things like the IRS scandals and spying on reporters, collecting our emails and phone records, forcing taxpayers to fund the slaughter of unborn children, we see yet another stunning example of reckless abuse of power.
Houston, we have a problem.
Yes, we have a problem, and it's in Houston. Annise Parker, the openly lesbian mayor of Houston, pushed through a city ordinance last spring that would give preference to transgender people who, while in the body of one gender, claim to identify with the opposite gender. Now, many Houston residents who didn't want to send their little girls into public restrooms to encounter grown men protested, and eventually they collected enough signatures to put the measure up for a vote before the people. Well, the heavy-handed mayor and city attorney declared that there weren't enough valid signatures, and citizens sued to keep from having their voting rights suppressed. Well, that inflamed the mayor and her city hall cronies, who then subpoenaed the sermons, as well as the correspondence, the notes, and all the other papers from Houston pastors and churches. Todd Starnes of FoxNews.com broke the story, and the storm came down. The Houston mayor pretended to be surprised that pastor sermon material was subpoenaed, but had previously tweeted this little message. It said, if the 5 pastors used pulpits for politics, their sermons are fair game. Or instructions given on filling out anti-hero petition. That makes it clear to me that she not only knew, but she approved. Well, we invited her on the show tonight, but she declined. I can't say that I blame her, because I'm not sure she would have enjoyed my questions very much. Here's one I would have asked. Ma'am, have you ever read the United States Constitution? I mean, ever? Are you familiar with the First Amendment? Do you believe the American form of government was designed to trample the most fundamental rights of its citizens and to allow government to abuse and ignore the law so that it can silence the voices and prevent the votes of people? Well, the Houston case reminds us how rapidly our country is being taken over by intolerant despots who will unleash a form of political genocide against Christians who still cling to their Bibles and refuse to bow their knee to the false gods of hate and religious bigotry. The Houston mayor and her ilk, like mayors in Chicago and Boston, who tried to prevent businesses opening in their cities because the business owners were Bible-believing Christians, well, she needs to apologize and start respecting all citizens, or at least have the integrity to resign. They shouldn't expect taxpayers to fund hate-filled Gestapo-like actions to openly attempt to shut down the free exercise of religion and then attempt to establish a religion of godless secularism. Now, why has this happened? Well, it's mainly because good church-going Christians don't vote and don't care. Of the 80 million self-identified evangelicals in America, half aren't even registered to vote. And of those, only half of them vote in a presidential year election. And only half of those vote in an off-year election like this year. It ought to make you mad and scare your pants off that a mayor thinks she can order pastors to turn in their sermons and correspondence to her. So I've got an idea. If she wants some sermons, here's my suggestion. I'd like to ask every pastor in America, not just the ones in Houston, I'd like to ask every pastor in America, send her your sermons. Go ahead, send them your sermons. Obviously, she could use a few. So if you're a pastor, send them to her. And here's another thought. Everybody watching the show ought to send her a Bible. That's right, everybody. Her address is on the screen. I hope she gets thousands and thousands of sermons and Bibles. Thanh Nguyen is the pastor of the Vietnamese Baptist Church in Houston. He came to America to escape a communist government that tried to control who and how he worshiped. He's one of the pastors who was subpoenaed. Eric Stanley is the lead Alliance of Defending Freedom attorney in the case, and both are joining me now. And Pastor Nguyen, I want to start with you because you escaped the tyranny of communism in Vietnam, one of the original boat people who got out of that country when you were literally escaping for your life. When you came to America, did you ever think that the government of the United States, acting through one of its mayors, would ask you to cough up your sermons so that they could approve them?
Never in my wildest dream that this happened to us here in America.
You must be a little disconcerted that this has been required of you or requested of you. Do you plan to give your sermons to the mayor of Houston?
Yes, she can have my sermon, but not by subpoena. Because our sermon is streamlined and millions of people watching in Vietnam and other parts of the world. It's made public. But to demand that I turn in my sermon and communication correspondence is violate what this nation is for. It's freedom of speech and freedom of religion.
When you got your subpoena, what was your first reaction to it? I'm just curious how it affected you when you first saw it.
Well, it shocked me at first, but I know that this is just a tactic to silence the voice of because you know, I feel like they want to send us a message that you speak up and you pay.
Eric, let me bring you into the conversation. You're the lead attorney that now defending these 5 pastors. Alliance Defending Freedom, your organization deals with issues like this, but I'll be honest with you, Eric, I've never seen anything quite this blatant. Is this a shock even for what you do?
This is an unprecedented attack on the religious liberty of pastors. In fact, when I got the subpoena, I literally was shocked to see the amount and breadth of what the city of Houston was asking of these pastors. 17 different categories of communications, including their speeches and sermons, and also including private communications with congregation members, which could be covered by the clergy confidentiality statutes. So this is what the city of Houston has done. I was literally floored when I saw these subpoenas.
You know, the mayor tried to say, well, we really didn't mean sermons, and that was an inadvertent attempt by some pro bono attorneys. But Eric, that doesn't hold water, because what she tweeted out specifically said sermons. Now, later, I think it was yesterday or sometime this week, she has amended and said, well, not their sermons, but their speeches. And I guess I'm trying to figure out what's the difference. Maybe you can help.
Yeah, there really is no difference here. The only thing that the city of Houston did is to remove the word sermons from the subpoena. But it literally still contains 17 different categories of communications, including any and all communications on this petition, any and all communications about the mayor, about homosexuality, about gender identity, and it still includes the private, confidential communications between pastors and their church members. The city of Houston just doesn't get it, it appears. It appears they've never read the First Amendment, as you said, and they don't seem to understand that when you go after pastors like this, you're running roughshod over the First Amendment.
I cannot imagine that there's any court in the land, lower or appellate or the Supreme Court, that would side with the city of Houston and what they've requested, whether it's in the guise of the discovery phase or not. Tell us what you expect is going to happen over the next few weeks and months in this case.
Well, I think you're exactly right. I mean, the important point to note is that Pastor Nguyen and the other 4 pastors who were subpoenaed, all that they did was they opposed this ordinance that the city had passed, and they encouraged people to sign this petition. Essentially, they were exercising their constitutional rights to free speech. Now, Alliance Defending Freedom, we're representing all 5 of the pastors, and we filed a motion to quash these subpoenas. And we expect to win that motion because this is so far out of bounds. Again, it's unprecedented.
You know, it occurs to me, Eric and Pastor Nguyen, that it may be that this one mayor of Houston, Texas, has done something that hundreds of thousands of pastors have been unable to do, and that's wake up their church members and finally help them realize that their faith and their freedom is under assault in this country. I hope it causes people to get up out of their slumber and understand that if we don't speak up, stand up, and do something to protect our freedoms, we will lose it. And that's why I'm hoping that everybody will send a Bible to the mayor, and all the pastors of America will send their sermons, not because they've been subpoenaed, but because if she wants sermons, by gosh, we ought to give her a pile to wade through and see if she enjoys them. Pastor Nguyen and Eric, thank you both.